parts. This is the third part to our Introduction to Philosophy lecture. In the first two parts, we were talking about philosophy in general. In the second part, we compared it to mythology, religion, and science. In this last part, we're going to kind of take on some kind of stereotypical things people talk about philosophers, or say about philosophers. So let's jump right in. Okay, and typically if I had the class here, I would ask, what are some of the stereotypical things you think of philosophers? I have a couple in mind that I'll just kind of briefly talk about. One of the biggest things I think people get on philosophers about is that we seem to lack maybe like common sense. People say things like we are so worried about, the things in the stars and heavens and the clouds and all these things that we don't notice things right in front of us. The real world, reality, the commonsensical world. My brother is one who gets on me about this all the time. Even in ancient Greece, they used to criticize philosophers of this. The first philosopher that we know back then is Thales, and there's actually a kind of old saying about him. They said that he was so involved in the stars and the clouds and the heavens that he didn't notice what was in front of him. And as he was walking one day, he fell into a well. And a young Thracian girl giggled quite a bit at him from doing this. The whole point being is we're so worried about these things that don't really mean anything, we don't notice what's right in front of us. In some cases, this may be true, okay? But with philosophers, they kind of want to spin this, though. And the best way to distinguish this is to talk about appearance versus reality, okay? And what a philosopher thinks is actually the opposite. Where most people say, we're worried about reality, these philosophers are worried about these things in the clouds and heavens. The philosophers say otherwise. They say what most people are talking about, these people talk about common sense, are just worried about what's appearing in front of them, the mere appearance. The philosopher has a hunch that there's something beyond this, something called maybe reality behind that. And that is what we're worried about. And so for the philosopher, we think it's actually flip-flop. The people falling into the wells are the people who are stuck in this mere appearance. They're stuck in the well and don't even realize it. That's the worst part. The philosopher is trying to climb out of the well and get to what is really there. That is what we think. Now, of course, this is a matter of opinion, and of course you're seeing a philosopher here trying to defend us. But if you're going to be a philosopher, there's something I think just instinctually about it. The philosopher does not believe that what is just in front of us is what is. There's something else. And I think that's the true stamp of any philosopher. Okay? Now, there's also some other things. People accuse us of going around in circles. Okay, let's talk about this one. Going around, in circles. Okay, people say philosophers, you get into arguments, and they seem to just argue and argue and argue and argue. This may be the case. You'll really kind of figure this out when you read Socrates. That's basically kind of what he does. It seems to happen is that the argument never seems to end, and most people just get pissed off and say, I'll see you later. Like in the Euthyphro just leaves. He's tired of it. And many people don't like it. It's like because we don't get any answers. We don't get that final solid truth we're looking for. And that may be the case. A lot of people don't like that. But at the same time, there is something that does happen when we do this. And it's very apparent in Socrates. And that is, as we argue and go around in these circles, right, we do find out certain ideas that will not work. Now, there may be thousands of ideas that could work, but we'll be able to exclude this one, this one, this one, and this one. We'll be able to point out, well, these answers cannot work. These are the only ones that can. And by doing this, we're now kind of making more specific the places we need to look at. And that can be something really, really good. Okay? And what philosophy tends to end up leading to, instead of that solid answer, is what we call a plurality of answers. Okay? It leads to a bunch of possible ideas that could be, could actually be. But hopefully, as we do this, we're excluding ones that could not be. And that becomes a really important part. Still, some people may hate it, but we do find points in it. And finally, the last one that I really want to draw on is this, is that philosophy is destructive. Okay? Is destructive. Okay? And what I mean by that is people say when I do philosophy, it tends to destroy my beliefs. Okay, someone who may be very religious or have a very, very strict opinion about what the world is, may think that if I do philosophy, what it ends up doing is it comes in and undermines or undercuts the things I believed in, and I don't want that. A lot of people find a very strong sense of power of thinking that they know what the world is really like. Philosophy tends to come along and it pretty much turns that on its head. If you're going to do philosophy, basically what you're end up realizing is you really don't know much at all. And a lot of people, that taking that sense of power away really upsets them. That's why a lot of people, as soon as you do philosophy or begin to get into a philosophical discussion, don't handle it too well. But I want to point out that though philosophy can be destructive, it's not a destructive towards nihilism or nothingness. Though some philosophers destroy for the sake of destruction, I don't believe that's what's happening when a philosopher does it. And for example, take someone who is really religious. They may feel that by doing philosophy or being in a philosophy class, they're undermining their religion, their belief in God. But one thing I want to show, though philosophy could do that, you may do it and discover that what I believed before is not the case. A lot of times people who have a certain belief and begin thinking about it actually come back to the belief even stronger. They may find ways of assessing other beliefs that have been challenging them and be able to argue against them. They may find better ways of supporting their own beliefs. In the end, philosophy is not just supposed to be destructive, it is supposed to help us build our own beliefs, okay? And philosophy can come in handy. I've had many people who actually become even stronger religiously or whatever they believe in after taking this class. And one other thing I want to point out is about another philosopher named Martin Heidegger. There we go. Martin Heidegger, one of my favorite philosophers. He is a German philosopher of the 20th century. Okay? And Martin Heidegger discussed something like this as well. He taught when anyone gets into philosophy deeply, what eventually happens is philosophy tends to undercut everything. We begin challenging everything. Everything that we once hold as true and were taught and brought up to believe is now pushed away. This can be extremely scary for some people. Heidegger talks about it being very angst-ridden or anxious-ridden. We are very anxious because I don't know what is and what isn't, and I'm so totally lost. This is why people get spun out in philosophy and don't like it, because of this very position. But Heidegger takes a whole nother look at this, and I believe on his side, I think he might be right, that when we get to this kind of anxious-ridden state of not knowing what is and what isn't, where everything becomes mistrusted, that even the most dear beliefs that we used to hold, okay? Heidegger says that is the first moment where you become free for yourself. Free for yourself. And what he means by this is we've gone our whole lives being told this is what it is, or the media is telling us this, or our TV is telling us this, or our friends are telling us this, and it begins to kind of create a confused place. And we begin to just accept whatever is appearing to us. By doing philosophy and destroying those appearances and pushing them all back, all we were left with is now you. And at that moment, this is where you can finally take maybe a leap or step towards and grasp onto what you truly believe in. Not because someone else tells you, but because you have decided it. And that, I think, is one of the most important things of philosophy, is by self-examining, okay, we can actually become true individuals, authentic individuals, and maybe in some sense, original individuals.